All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another show. Today's guest is Kyle Toucher. Rhymes with voucher, just in case you wondered if you see it, voucher. Just think of voucher. Kyle Toucher. This guy is so exciting. He was raised on a diet of Frankenstein and Godzilla and Black Sabbath. So, and Black Flag. So, however you want to combine all of that in your head. Add a little Lovecraft into that. Also, Nardcore is going to be coming up during this conversation because I have no idea what that is, but I'm dying to find out. He just wrote the book Live Wire, which I am halfway through. Very exciting read. I'm really struggling with skimming fast on this book because I really want to read every word. He lives with his wife, 5 cats. I know, be careful because he's got 5 cats, 2 dogs, and a lot of guitars. Several is the technical term, in a secure and undisclosed location. And we don't know if that's because the cats are holding him hostage or the guitars are really, really valuable, but these are questions that we are going to follow up on. If you want to find him, description, find all the links, kyletoucher.monster. Also super interested in this. But really quick, I want to do a shout out from last week's show where the conversation went to slugs. So Stephanie Ellis wrote a slug poem in tribute to that conversation. Like I said, you never know where the conversation is going to go here in Exercise Your Rights. And we're probably exercising a lot more rights than we need to. But yeah, thank you, Stephanie, for that slug poem. And now let's get busy and meet Kyle Toucher, our guest. Oh, which did I even say that he has like a ton of Emmys and other prizes, which, so super important, famous guy. Don't mess this up for me, guys. Be polite. And let's get started.
Launch sequence activated.
This is not a drill.
And hello.
Hi there. How are you today? It's glad to be on the show with you, Angela, and meet everybody. That was quite an intro. I was like, oh my God, do I know that guy?
I stumble along and just make stuff up.
I just make shit up to sound interesting. Because as a kid, my dad, I remember King Kong from 33 and Bride of Frankenstein being on TV a lot, because it was the 70s, and so that's what was on television. He sat me because, he was born in the mid-30s, so by that time I was a kid, he's already in his late 30s, 40s. Sits me down on the TV and says, you need to see these. And so I'm watching Willis O'Brien's VFX work in Kong, and then I saw The Bride of Frankenstein, the original Frankenstein, all the Universal stuff, and that stuff is just like imprinting on the motherboard, when I was young. And that just started the path because that was all the input, right? And it was just at the age that I was born because I was a kid in the late 60s and early 70s. So TV's full of Thunderbirds, which was a spaceship show with puppets. You may not.
Oh, I remember the Thunderbirds.
Oh, okay. And so there was that, and Gigantor, the space age robot, and then all the Godzilla stuff started happening with King Ghidorah, and there was, Gamera, War of the Gargantuas, and so I was just inundated with that stuff because I was lucky to be born in a first world country and didn't have to, pick shallots. And so that was really, and that's really what got it started on the whole path, and in the bio you mentioned the Sabbath thing and everything. So it just turns out the Black Sabbath is a heavier version of the music that was in those Japanese movies.
I never connected that, but yeah, you're right.
So look at the footage of Godzilla stomping the train or whatever. There's the close-ups of the feet. Dong, 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 right? All minors, devil's interval, all this stuff. First time I heard guitars do that, right? And it was bludgeoningly heavy. I'm a teenager.
Yeah.
There's Zeppelin. There's all this stuff back then. That hits me, and I recognized it, and I made the connection right away. Oh my God, this is Godzilla music with guitars.
Oh, that's awesome.
Maybe that should have been the name of their first record, but so that put the hook in me too, and it was all turned into this big stew of, where I am today. So.
Yeah, because you do visuals, movie, audio with the sound, and now you're writing, which is like the whole cerebral imagination thing. So how do you merge all of those? Like, how do all those things connect up in one person?
Well, I did start writing when I was really young, when I was a kid.
Okay.
Because I still remember his name. I don't know what happened. He was a kid by the name of Mark Ivey. He was in my second or third grade class. Brilliant kid. and he would write stories, and they were good. And we both started collaborating on things with like the hot dog men and the cake people came down, and and they were absurd, alien invasion stories. But at the time, like me and the other boys in the class, we were watching the Godzilla films and all the stuff that would run on what they called the Channel 5 movie theater. The same movie would run all week long. So we knew the dialogue, by the end of it. And so we started writing a lot, and then I would rewrite movies that I didn't like the ending of and things like that. And I would do that a lot as a kid, I never had anything published until I was 58. But that's what started that, and I've always been attracted to it. So off and on throughout my life, I've actually done that. And Livewire, the book we're talking about today, was first originally written as a short story in 1986.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, when I was a kid, we were in a band called Dr. No. We're on the road. We're going through the desert. I'm looking at all the high tension towers, those 100-foot monsters, and one of the things that just hit me, I had recently read Trucks and Skeleton Crew and all the King stuff. I thought, wow, what if those things were walking around? And that was the germ of the story. And,
yeah, I love the description of those, by the way. I mean, just colossal. Like, I could go on for pages of just your description of those things. I mean, I don't want to give away spoilers, but we'll just say those things.
Well, yeah, it gets pretty crazy, and it's not like that isn't the whole crux of the story, as you know, as you read in the books. Oh, look, we're trapped by giants. Whatever shall we do? But in the midst of that, of course, people are dealing with deep emotional trauma, while the absolute possibility of giants is outside.
Yeah.
And,
there is so much tension in that gas station, in that kind of opening scene where you've got those things happening, and then the tension amongst the people is so just really well done. This is where I try to say stuff without saying stuff.
But then the phone rings, and why don't you just stab everyone?
I know, and what such a creepy idea. And I'm like I said, I'm only halfway through. But I'm there for it. Usually I really skim a lot of these books because, time and everything.
Well, I'm glad that it struck you like that, and you said you felt compelled to read the whole thing. That's fabulous.
Yeah.
And by the time we get somewhere in the middle of the book, we're at the VLA, or at the Very Large Array in New Mexico, which really exists. And then we find out really what went down. So
oh, nice.
I don't know if you're there yet, but
I am at they're in the Ryder truck.
Oh, okay, yeah. So you know everything that happened at the VLA. Okay.
Yeah. So now they're speeding, and I'm assuming there's this meetup between the Ryder truck, because we've seen the Ryder truck at the end of the Ryder truck's path, and so now I'm in the Ryder truck, speeding that way.
We're non-linear at first, and then we meet and we go on a linear timeline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
and then then we break it up with a dance number, so at least there's that too. So great potential.
Are you sarcastic? There is a dance number?
I'm laying it on with a spatula. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I was I really don't see how that's going to fit, but I'm there for it. All right, bring it.
So I the way I describe it is I tell people it's Stephen King and Michael Crichton at lunch on a bender.
Yeah. Well, that's on the back of the cover. It's Black Magic meets Big Tech. What could go wrong? Which fits. Yeah. And what could go wrong?
How can that lose? Right? Didn't what's his name, Arthur C. Clarke, say that magic, high technology can be indistinguishable from magic.
Yeah.
I'm sure in 1604 the light bulb would have been utter witchery.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Well, as we're traveling and we're finding black matter, dark matter, and the sympathetic resonance between atoms, and pretend I know what I'm talking about here. The super layman bleh, things that I've read that I probably misunderstand, but all of these things, as I'm reading, I'm well, that's magic. I mean, that's kind of the whole sympathetic, your words have power and the intention and all that. So,
well, there is a supernatural.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't kid yourself. You want the biggest supernatural book in the world is the Bible.
Oh, I know. Best-selling horror book and romance,
there's everything in it. There's valor, there's romance, there's victory, there's punishment, there's redemption, there's everything in it. Everything in it is the complete manual of all storytelling. It's all there.
Yeah.
And there's nothing more supernatural than that, because supernatural actually truly exists, and you're in the middle of it.
Oh yeah. Witches, wizards, the whole bit.
the whole bit. So, for me, I was like, if people talk about horror tropes, you know, I think if there has to be a supernatural element, or you're just a slasher film at that point, but there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
But I thought Hellraiser a lot scarier than the Friday the 13th movies.
I didn't. Yeah, I absolutely agree, because it's that unknown quality. Like right now, I'm kind of creeped out because, like in Live Wire, you've got the glyphs, which are referred to as almost like the way I'm picturing is almost like runic and stuff. So how are these things coming through, and what do they mean? And now you've got the voice and the way it's affecting people. Very supernatural elements. So. Yeah, but
and even the writing gets visual towards the end of the story when it starts getting super weird. So.
Oh, okay.
We just went full throttle at the end for it, because in my mind, since I'm also a VFX artist, I kind of had this big, 240 screen going in my head as I was writing it. So that's why it's as visual as you're saying. There's a lot. I think probably some of that is in there. I mean, as they're in the writer truck, I don't know how far you are in the writer truck, but there was a huge visual event when they're in the truck too, which you may not have read yet. But
I think I'm getting up on that. I feel like it's building towards something, so that's probably what I'm getting ready to discover right now.
Yeah. That's where the VFX money will be spent.
Yeah, which in writing is probably so much cheaper than what you're used to.
Well, the thing is, I worked in television for many years, and I didn't even start doing visual effects until I was 36. I'm 60 now, but and that wouldn't have happened if Slayer hadn't covered one of my songs. So the story just gets more and more absurd.
Okay.
It's just this weird supernatural magical bag of events, and it's almost it's like fall into a river of shit. They take you out. Why? Look, I'm wearing a rubber suit. And so I know I'm kind of all over the timeline thing. So there was all the interest in the horror stuff, and then the heavy music thing, especially at the time, and it was Zeppelin and Floyd and Sabbath and all this stuff. But at the same time, all the real first gen punk rock stuff was happening in the club. So we started hearing about the Damned and the Pistols. Pistols made a big, huge thing. That record came out in America. Ramones were already happening, right? So I'm in high school. I'm a prime target for that when it happened. So I had all that stuff with real crazy skilled musicians that I like to listen to, right? Plus all this raw, snotty stuff that was coming out of nowhere, right? And so we'd sneak out and go see these bands down in LA. I was from a town called Oxnard, California, which is about an hour north of Los Angeles on the beach. It's a surf town, actually. And although I'm not a surfer, and I swim like a kitten. And anyway, so we'd go into LA into these clubs, and we'd see DOA, Canadian band, Subhumans, Black Flag in tiny rooms. And we knew the songs because we were buying these underground records that you weren't supposed to have. Because in those days, kids, punk rock bands weren't on Sony. I mean, none of that existed. Their gear was held together with duct tape and Hail Marys. And the clubs were sweaty, horrible nightmares. We're getting shocked by microphones, the whole bit.
There was no Hot Topic. There was no like place where you could buy this stuff. You actually had to duct tape it and safety pin it yourself.
You made flyers by cutting out creepy pictures and putting them on a Xerox. Yeah. For those in the back of the theater, the Xerox was a copy machine. So if you wanted to find the Black Flag gig, you followed the police helicopter spotlight. I mean, that's how it was in those days. It was great. It was awesome.
Oh, that's awesome.
So my first concert is Pink Floyd on the Animals tour at Anaheim Stadium. Bigger than life, right?
Wow.
I'm 14 years old, right? It was awesome. It was fabulous. But I wanted to be in a band, but that's completely unachievable, right? And then I see Johnny Winter, one of the best slide players in the world. Completely unattainable. No way you're going to do that. Saw the Ramones and the Runaways in '78, and they're touring on Rocket to Russia. This is Lita Ford and Joan Jett in the band. It was after Sherry Curry.
I got to interview Joan Jett one time.
So really?
Yeah, later, not then.
She's cool. And still, it's on a big stage in a giant room, unachievable. Saw Black Flag in our closet, right? A little dumpy thing and louder than all hell. And the sweat flying, the slam pits, you're 17, 18 years old. I can do that. Right. So that's what led. So now we had the impetus, and now we had the inspiration said, well, maybe you don't have to play like Richie Blackmore to be in a band, right? Maybe you
Yeah.
don't have to be a virtuoso guitar player, right? And so we started that up, and the influences were that stuff, plus all the other stuff we talked about earlier. That has a little horror tinge to it, and you're off to the races. Okay? Years later, Slayer is making a record of punk rock and hardcore covers. Jeff Hanneman, who's now dead, the blonde guitar player who's now dead, wanted to do one of our songs called Mr. Freeze. The band was called Dr. No, K-N-O-W. The song was called Mr. Freeze. They put it on the thing. And at the time, I wanted to have a real career in something else, and I wanted to do CGI, but I had zero money. I mean, zero. And I got a check for $5,000, which was all the money in the world when you're broke, right? That's everything.
Mhm.
And it's also, mid-90s, when $5,000 still would go somewhere. So I bought a really decent high-end computer at the time. I had a monitor that was, monstrous, a CRT brain eraser, got cracked software, learned the software, and like 6 months later had a job at Foundation Imaging, the house that first did CGI on TV with Babylon 5. And they were doing Perfect Voyager at the time and all that. So I made a reel of spaceships and stargates and all this stuff. So it all converged there. And when I finally met Kerry King years later at a Morton's Steakhouse, I said, "You're not going to believe this story, dude." First you thought it was some fan idiot, and when I told him who I was, and the story about how Slayer covering Mr. Freeze directly led to 2 Emmys on my shelf for Galactica and Firefly, right?
Yeah.
Because you've got to be shitting me. I said it's completely true.
Yeah, that is.
So it's
awesome.
not covered Mr. Freeze. It wouldn't have started my visual effects career, which led to being on those sci-fi shows.
Yeah.
And I know it's bizarre.
That's crazy. That's why it's so important, I think, for us to support each other cross, you know what I mean? Like cross, I want to say generationally, but like cross genre, cross disciplines. That's the word I'm looking for. Because you just never know. I mean, creative is creative. And you usually don't stay creative in one area, kind of thing. Yeah. So who knows? You help some kid out, and who knows where they're going to be.
Well, that and what's great too about that in general too, in VFX and in writing, you're always going to meet brilliant people. There are many dumb writers. There aren't anybody funny who's dumb, right? And and the VFX, and you've got you have to be. And I'm not saying I'm just pinnacle of intelligence or anything, but I mean,
there's just a couple of Emmys,
Well, there's a certain amount of horsepower. Well, remember, those are team efforts. It wasn't the Kyle Toucher show. I mean, we did years and years on Galactica and all its spinoffs. And that team got to be a machine. And a lot of us were from Foundation Imaging, and we ended up in our own unit there at Universal that just dealt with Galactica and its other properties. And it was great. It was an awesome, great thing to do. It was so much fun. It's a great game. We loved going to work, even on days when we got to grind.
Yeah, that's the dream right there.
Yeah, it was cool. It was great. And for a while, before there was that big leap in television effects like you started seeing on Game of Thrones and stuff like that, it was like the Star Trek team, and it was mostly sci-fi stuff that were the tallest hogs in the trough there. And you weren't arrogant about it. It was just that's just the level of that's just where the work was, and it's where the tech was. Mm-hmm. But once all the really high-end stuff was able to be afforded and implemented down on the TV level, and you could start getting that ILM level stuff from these HBO shows, they were off to the races. That was the end. So, and now you have, look at the last season of Game of Thrones or The Last of Us or whatever. There's stellar work.
Yeah.
And a lot of that stuff. Now Netflix will spend $100 million on a project.
Yeah.
BSG had a budget of $1 million an episode, which is, it's a lot in a suitcase. That's nothing. You spread it around that. And, we were, having render errors 2 days before airtime and delivering shots, it airs on Thursday, and Tuesday things are failing. I mean, they're pretty tense. But, it's I've been very, very fortunate with that, But when COVID, all that stuff happened after Top Gun. That's a whole other story. But that opened up the opportunity for me to just really do nothing but write. And, That's how
Well,
that
that's what I
door
was
opened.
going to ask you is how did the book come out of all of that? I mean, that's
A lot of time,
yeah,
right? Yeah, because I mean, these are 60-hour weeks, 70-hour weeks, things like that. And I was in my 40s and into my early 50s then. You start getting tired, after a while. It starts grinding. And at the same time, we had a band reunion thing from 2011 to 2015 where we did a lot of shows. So I'd work all day, we did rehearsals and stuff. So I started thinking my ass was dragging, but it was fun. It was cool. Now none of us are alcoholics, and we know we play better and finally can afford good gear, and so yeah, that helps.
responsibility with.
Well, yeah, now we can finally afford the good gear, and we had an opportunity, go out and use it instead of, like I said, duct tape and Hail Marys. Right?
Yeah.
So all those things start kind of, there's a little bit of, what's the word I'm like, there's cross-pollination, of course, and all of it. But the events or the disciplines started to overlap. I'm doing two things at once. I can do three things. I can only do two of them at once. You know what I mean? I don't think I could have a VFX, like be in a band and try to write. I can't do it all. It's enough hours.
Yeah. Well, and just the version thing, because you kind of get focused in on one thing.
Yeah.
For a while, so that you can really do all the the different branches of that thing. It's never just you don't write a book. There's so many things that spin into that. I imagine it's the same with
the focus was
music.
Awesome. To have the time for the focus was so good.
Yeah.
Because the rest of the world's biting its nails and flipping out and wearing masks and being paranoid. It was like the thing. No one trusts each other. It was ridiculous. And, all right, I got a great opportunity. There's it's raining helicopter money. I was done with a large project. Just, let's take the year off. And and the weather was nice. Sat out in Southern California. Sat out there, and humidor was full, and wrote actually two novels. Wrote one called Exeter, and then which I've rewritten 3 times since then, and took Livewire off the shelf. And I was just going to rewrite it as a story. Then it started expanding. I started having other ideas with it. Next thing I knew, it was novel length. So did 3 drafts of that. Hired an editor. Pro tip: hire an editor. And, oh yeah. Somebody
even if you are an editor, hire an editor. I edit. I still have an editor.
Yeah. And that was, enormously helpful, very eye-opening, and it had not been for him, I don't know how long it would have taken to get it into publishable shape, And Crystal Lake has been great, as part of their show. They have a thing called Shallow Waters, which is great for writers on any level. It's a thing where everybody contributes little 1,500-word stories every month, and Joe Meinhardt picks like 15 or 20 of them, throws them up on his Patreon page, and everyone can vote for what they like and what they don't. So I started.
I've heard about that actually.
Oh, it's awesome. They've done like 11 things with mine, and I've had like 10 or 11 stories, and I started building my whole fictional universe in that while I was writing other things. So you read enough of my stuff, you'll realize that Livewire crosses over with Life Returns, which has touches on Exeter, which is so it's a whole little there's a web. Let's put it that way.
That's awesome.
We're all woven together. Yeah.
So are you like Exeter? Is that going to come out, or like what's happening with this? Because I know it's going to go further.
I had an editor look at that, and then so I have a 120,000 word manuscript that I have to get busy. I got it back months ago. Word got gnarly, so I ended up in that. Then there was all this stuff to get Livewire ready, and so it's sitting there with all the editor's notes and everything like that. I'm hoping to go into that in May and put the spit shine on that thing. There's character development stuff that needs to be done, and but a lot of the action stuff and the big large scale things in it are probably fine. It's just the nuanced stuff that takes the most of me, But the last third of that book is all monsters. So
you do monster well. I'm just going to say that, like the feeling of grand scale, cosmic, colossal, like helplessness on the ground level of the reader. Like there's nothing I can do if I was here. Like a lot of stress and panic. You make it very hard to read a book and go to sleep. So I'm just going to say that which is why I read so much, so in depth, because I read before bed, and you've kept me up a lot.
Oh, Well, because and part of the structure of Livewire too is that it takes interview sections of one of the survivors of the incident,
Yeah.
which gives us backstory, out of, again, that they're nonlinear until all the storylines meet up,
Yeah.
long after the sequence you're reading now, and then there's which they're supposed to look like, kind of redacted documents and stuff, stuff I lifted straight from Crichton from reading his books when I was young.
Yeah.
The Andromeda Strain and all that stuff. So Life Returns, which I released prior to Livewire, which is based on one of the band's old songs. See how neatly all this fits together, right? So the idea was to take a song. There was a Dr. No song called Life Returns. The basic premise of the song was, ooh, spooky, revenge from the grave, right? I said, well, I need a way to bridge the gap to the people that still like the band when I was doing in my 20s, if there's in any way interested in what I'm doing in my 60s, right? So why don't we take that story? And while I was writing, I said, of course. So I wove it into the whole universe that relates to everything else. So It's the Shadowless Ones, and there's Walpurgis Peak, which is a lot of the stuff I've already released. So, and that's about 20,000 words, so it's not that long, but it is a full-on horror story. The spooky house, the weird aunt and uncle, and shit goes down. And but it stays true to the theme of the original song that people know, even weaving lines of the lyrics, in the prose.
Oh, that's awesome.
So when they stumble along, they go, "Oh, that's in the song." So it was almost kind of a love letter to them too, because if it hadn't been for that band or the VFX career, which made the time, which allowed me to afford to sit there in 2020 to do this stuff, we wouldn't be talking about that.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. All of it is a big coiled rope that is all twisted around each other to get you to the end. All roads lead to where you are, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's awesome how you have used all these different, what you might think of like not relatable, different career paths, and they've merged into one solid thing.
It is a little weird, and it's not totally by design. I mean, sometimes it is when I dawn on that, like Life Returns, which is available on Amazon.com right now for free.
I was actually where is that?
And Crystal Lake was nice enough to host it for me on their website as a way to to get a little thrust. So people are interested in that and can go through that short read when Livewire comes out next week on the 14th. Hopefully they'll be primed for that. And there's a slight amount of overlap in it.
Yeah.
But they take place completely 20 years apart. Life Returns takes place in 78. And Livewire takes place in 93, because I didn't want to do it in an era with no computers, no cell phones. You're cut off, power goes out.
Yeah.
Trouble,
Yeah. Life without cell phones. So how is that even a thing anymore? I do remember it.
Yeah, old cars, no nav system. Those good old days, kids. I was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any character crossovers?
There isn't some stuff, but not in. I've written satellite stories of Livewire for Shallow Waters, the Patreon thing for Crystal Lake, telling the stories. There's a side story for Ken Lightfeather, and there was a side story for Otis Thompson, the guy who owns the gas station. And Ken Lightfeather is a trucker. He's an Apache with a big 44 on his head. And he mentions in the gas station, which I think you read, he tells Caleb, the kid, he says, I once saw the same dead woman in 3 different truck stops in 3 different states. So there's a story in the Shallow Waters collection of his first incident with that.
Oh, interesting. Because that by itself was such an interesting statement. Like just that just led so much, but so I kind of wanted to go down that path, but then you really can't, because there's so much happening at that moment. It's just kind of like what? Oh, now we're off.
I kind of do that for myself. I kind of drop those things in there, because then when I'm going through on the, through the aspect, I can do something with that later. And, that's another neuron or tributary, that can go off.
Yeah.
So I kind of drop myself little Easter eggs, because I go, well, maybe I'll come back to that, or I'll do 3 adjectives in a row when I come back. Pick one, So I actually love to edit. I actually love to edit my stuff, but I have to hand it off to somebody else. Yeah.
Right, because we can't see our own mistakes. I mean,
Oh,
that's
no.
why they're mistakes.
Oh yeah, and they find because you'll also blow past typos because you know the pros,
Mhm.
right? You know.
Yeah. Yeah, or
And,
things that don't make sense because you know what happened in that background story. You know what happened in that closet, but the
Right.
reader doesn't, so it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So
And when I edit myself, the first thing I go through, I'm slicing adverbs, and for some reason I'm nuts with prepositional phrases I have to just excise. It's on the desk, it's near the table, it's under the couch. Good God, I know,
yeah,
So
yeah.
I mean, there's a whole bucket of prepositional phrases sitting here by the side of this desk.
Just waiting.
Oh, you see my socks? Hold on, I got a prepositional phrase for that. It's like,
Well, I'm going to ask you one of the visual elements of this, because it is a very visual story, was the purple lightning. Because I've never come across that before. And I don't know why that really strikes me as being so weirdly unusual, but really it works so well. It's like Prince came and met horror, and like now we've got,
yeah, a little bit of purple rain, but it's a fascinating color. It's red and blue mixed together. I mean,
yeah.
and I've done a lot of nebula shots and stuff like that, and had flashing lights inside volumetric clouds. These are CGI terms.
Oh yeah.
And it just looks. The color is you don't see it a lot in nature. It's
Yeah.
maybe in flowers and fruit and eggplant and what else, and it just. Blue and white, and usually see for lightning. I've seen
Yeah.
pink lightning before in Texas.
Yeah.
I was extremely hungover, but I remember it. And I verified with other people in the van. I go, was that pink lightning? Yeah.
Well, and purple's an occult color. It's not like people usually think of like green as like a magic color, and
Oh yeah, that. It was spooky.
purple is like
spooky.
Power.
Yeah, you don't want it to be like goosebumps or there's some green slime, right? And that's fine, but I just, it'd been done, and purple and orange are actually complementary colors. And we're working on there was an old Starship Troopers CGI show a long time ago, and it's called Roughnecks. There was probably people young enough here who probably watched that as kids. Anyways, but I worked on it, and we had a whole series of shows take place on Pluto. And anyway, the light rig that we would all load into our shots, so our lighting was consistent, had a strong orange key and a purple fill, and they looked great together. Now, those two colors together always stuck with me. In fact, I even told them that we built that rig. I was doing a job with them actually a few weeks ago. You know what? I go, I still think about that. It was a seriously basic light rig, but it looked great.
Yeah.
You only got to buy quality once, and sometimes a simple solution is the answer. So those two colors together always stuck with me, and maybe that's the genesis of it. It's kind of a rabbit hole, but even the insulators on the towers are glowing with it as it runs down the lines.
Yeah.
It's a whole. You can see the color palette if you could, see it on screen. You can see it. You already know what there's going to handle it. Hopefully.
Do you hope to get this on screen? Because this would be a great. I'm just saying. You probably know people.
Why don't you reach into that desk and write me a check for $80 million?
Oh yeah, okay. I'm not gonna say it might not bounce, but yeah, I'll do that.
I've worked with some great directors and stuff, but I'm not part of the, I'm not in the club, and I will certainly try to bring it to somebody's attention, maybe make a presentation package of it. I think it would be a great movie.
I do too.
Yeah. I mean, if you really don't want to go, you can really make it into like a 4-part Netflix thing if you don't want to cut anything out of the story.
Yeah.
If you want to start for the finish.
They could save money because you could do the effects for it.
I'm too close to it. You know what I mean? Sometimes you gotta, so once you get 16 revisions into a shot, sometimes somebody else has to tell you what's wrong with it.
Yeah.
It's like hiring an editor.
I was gonna say it's just like editing.
Anything. Sometimes you just need other eyes, right? If you're cooking sauce, you have the spoon and the ladle. Taste this.
Yeah, taste
right?
this. Let me know what you think.
Right.
Yeah.
But I would love to see there's a lot of stuff I've written which probably would be fine for me. There's a lot of people say that. I'm sure everything you've written, there's stuff that would look great on film. You know?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just, I
Well,
guess I
worked
can
out
tell
for
that
him,
you're
too.
special effects because you have so much effect, like so much visual power in this story.
Oh, I know what the audio mix should be like. I know what the camera move should be. Yeah, you know, I might be terrible at directing the performances, but you know, I know how to frame it. You know, because that's what I do. I'm CG camera room. My job is largely these days is previs. I lay out the shots. You know, here's how we're going to move. Here's how it's going to be framed. You know, so a lot of that was crazy space stuff in sci-fi shows. You know, moving the Serenity around in the Firefly days, and you know, another great gig. And in Maverick, I was part of a very small team that we blocked out all the aerial sequences before the Navy flew them. Because with jet fuel being $30,000 an hour, you kind of want to know what you want to do before you
Yeah.
do that. And that was great.
That's awesome.
I did not meet Mr. Cruz. No, I did not. But I only worship from afar.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I'm over here in the questions in my head. That was not one of them. That would be like a good one. I'm over here still going, okay, I've got to ask what Nardcore is. I must ask what Nardcore
okay.
is.
Well, I was from a town called Oxnard, California, gateway to the Channel Islands. And if you look at a map of California, there's some islands down there in the very southern region. They're called the Channel Islands. And there are cities there: Santa Barbara, Ventura, Oxnard. We're just a little bit north of Malibu and that stuff, right? And it's not all rich kids and surfboards smoking dope. I mean, these were actually agricultural working class towns that happened to be on the beach at the time. Right? I mean, there's still an expensive marina area and all that, but it was an awesome place to grow up in the 60s and 70s. It was great. Weather was always great. Oh, yeah. So, since the punk rock metal hybrid stuff we're playing was called hardcore, of course, we're from Oxnard. It was Nardcore.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, our bass player thought of that. He goes, well, it's not hardcore, it's Nardcore. So that became a whole label. And there were other bands, Dr. No, our band, Gresham, Repute, other bands, RTL, all these other bands were all kind of lumped in with it, or they're from the Tri-City area. And
That's so
that
cool.
became a thing. And we'd go on the road together, or we'd have Nardcore blowouts at the community center when all the bands would come home from the road. We'd all play together and stuff like that. It was cool. It was awesome.
That is very cool.
Yeah, there was
So
a whole
now as a writer,
gang bands now for sure. What's that?
yeah. Oh, I was just gonna say, now that you're a writer, you could have Nerdcore. Like you could get a bunch of writers together. You guys could do Nerdcore.
I didn't even think that. That could be like a writer convention. You know?
There you go. StokerCon is canceled. Nerdcore. StokerCon is not canceled. I'm gonna get a bunch of emails now. Why did you say that? It's not canceled, everybody. I'm just joking.
What are those? I've never been to any writer functions at all. I don't even actually really even know any other writers. So, what are those functions like? Are they? They got to be fun. But you need
Amazing.
right?
Amazing. Yeah, the first one I went to was wild. So picture walking into a room. This was after the banquet. Walking into a room and it is shoulder to shoulder, and they are playing Rocky Horror Picture Show soundtrack. And smoke-filled room, and the bathtub is full of ice and liquor, and that's basically the party.
Like digital.
Yeah, so it's not boring. I'll say that. That was a lot of fun. They have calmed down, I think, in the later years. Just by necessity of sometimes a little too wild and things happen. But they're still just a lot of fun. Horror writers are some of the best people. So I hope you come to StokerCon and any of these events, though. StokerCon is going to be in Pittsburgh this year in June. And I don't have the dates off the top of my head, but yeah. And then it kind of
Pittsburgh called the Electric Banana, run by a gangster.
Oh, wow. I wonder if that's still around.
This is almost 40 years ago. It was called the Electric Banana. It was run by some, you were there like a goon, and you guys are gonna, no, you don't need food on your rider. My wife will make you meatball sandwiches. You're gonna be meatball sandwiches. You're gonna be okay. You sit over there, and you're bringing in the gear, and you go on at 9 o'clock. It's fine.
That's awesome.
But it was just, I always remember that in Pittsburgh. The Electric Banana. So that was in the mid 80s. So who knows what the place is now?
Yeah.
It's probably a weed store.
A head shop. Yeah. I have to say I'm a little bit jealous because I was an 80s child. So I came into Like we were the, new wave, which, that whole movement. And so we wanted to be punk rock. We loved the Sex Pistols and stuff, but we were new wave. And so there was this whole worship thing going on from our generation backwards. Is like I almost got to see Jello Biafra in Denver
every show
at
we
a
did with
political
the Dead
rally. Huh?
Kennedys. Yeah. Every show we did with the Dead Kennedys was gigantic.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I like, huge regrets in my life. He was doing some kind of political rally at the school or like a talk or something. And my teenage self was like, well, I don't want to go do that if there's no music. And so I didn't go, and kicked myself ever since.
Yeah, he was
Lost opportunities.
He actually really talks like that, And but we played with Dead Kennedys, I think 3 or 4 times. And one of the biggest ones, I think, was in San Diego at a place called the California Theater, I think. It was massive. They were making 20 grand a night back then.
Oh, dang.
And that was a lot of dough, and we
Yeah.
were making like 400 or something. We were making nothing. It just paid for itself. And they were just, the Golden Boys back then was a huge promotion company who are gigantic now. In the early, they started off in punk rock promotion during these shows 35 years ago. That's where they started.
Oh, wow.
And they would do these shows in San Diego, but in Santa Barbara and Los Angeles, Olympic Auditorium, which used to be a wrestling auditorium. And we did big shows there. There were, but all the big British bands would come into LA and they'd play there. And then LA bands or other bands from, other American bands would support. You'd have to these 4 or 5 band bills. There'd be 3,000 people there. It was huge. It was great.
Oh, man.
They're basically as close as you get to an arena show in those days, but still be as punk as you could get. It was awesome because you weren't supposed to be doing it. It was still kind of a subversive underground thing that everybody hated. If Chicks made an episode about how bad you were, of course we'd all watch it and laugh, right? And they'd have, my kid is punk rock and Jerry Springer or whatever,
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, it was really weird at the time,
Oh, that's awesome.
The metal bands began to embrace it, so they started playing fast, and then Metallica did it they played very fast but accurate, right? Super fast but really on time, right? James Hetfield still has the best right hand in the world. Whether you like it or not, that guy is just an unimaginable rhythm guitar player. And he's 60 years old and he's still just 1,000 miles an hour and super accurate. So, there started to be, again, just like the other things, everything starts to merge, right?
Yeah.
And there's certain blurred lines, and then the bands start playing together. So we're playing with Megadeth and we're playing with Testament and we're playing with Dark Angel and stuff like that, because we got a little bit of Sabbath in us, but we also have a little bit of Discharge and DOA and all that.
Yeah.
So it all kinds of, it was cool. So you just start reaching a wider audience, and everybody's cool. I always found in the heavy rock scene that the audiences are the coolest people. Rarely are there fights, and any of that other silliness. But this was all 40 years ago, and it was all new.
Yeah.
But we're really here to talk about books and not about.
I was going to say that sounds a lot like the horror community when you were asking. So pretty much the same kind of vibe.
Yeah, I'd imagine a slam pit doesn't break out at StokerCon, but you never know, it might.
It would be a fun one though. Everybody would be lovingly slamming.
Does it turn into a full booze fest once you guys get out of the banquet hall? You guys hit the bars or what?
Yeah, and there's a lot of private parties and stuff like that. So it's just winds up being it's a fun bunch of people. I mean, some genres are pretty judgy, I'll say. I'm not going to name any genres, romance, but I've heard things. I haven't been a part of it myself, but
so
horror is definitely not a
I can envision what that sounds like.
Yeah.
The outsiders, the outsiders and the misfits and the people that didn't, really, that maybe didn't put their pants on the right way. They're usually the most interesting cats. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can go to the arena for the big show, but the fun stuff is happening in the basement.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the way it's always been, and, is Livewire on Simon & Schuster? No, it's with Crystal Lake Publishing. This is a club band on a cool indie label.
Yeah.
Exactly what it is. And COP's been great, especially there's been formatting problems with stuff that I've done in the book because the text gets weird and they've been great about it. And so we finally got it nailed down. And in fact, the final paperback formatting came to me today. It's fine. Send it out. And because nothing you can do because it comes out next Friday. And
No pressure.
but yeah, but they've been fabulous about it, and with the cover and with everything. And I can't say enough good things about it. Take a chance on an unknown, who nobody knows about, and it's great. So, and Nick Roberts, who wrote The Exorcist House, which has been their biggest seller, that's been a very good novel. He wrote really kind things about Livewire. He read an arc of it.
Oh,
And,
nice.
And so there's a quote from him on the Amazon page. That was really nice of him to do that.
That is so cool.
Yeah, he and I are both Blatty fans. So, because I think The Exorcist is the first horror book I ever read.
That you read?
Yeah, I read it when I think I was 13 when I read it.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, and I had no idea books could do that. I mean, I'd read some books before when I was a kid, but I never read anything like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't just that it's filled with profanity but once that story really gets cranking in the second half, I don't know if you've read it or not.
Oh yeah.
But he just puts the pedal down in the second half.
I actually got to stand on those steps where the priest
falls down. I have a
yeah.
picture of myself at the bottom of them in Georgia.
Those are the places you have to go.
Because the house is actually on a different street. The window's on a different street, and the stairs are somewhere else.
Yeah.
And first time we ever played in DC, we gotta go to the Exorcist stairs. So there's a picture of me. I probably weigh 140 pounds, and I'm laying on the bottom of the steps. And then he wrote Legion a few years later, which was turned into Exorcist 3. Directed by him. And and you got to remember too, Blatty was a comedy writer, because he used to work for, work with Blake Edwards a lot, the guy who did the Pink Panther movies and that stuff. So he used to.
Interesting. I never knew that.
Yeah, his early novels are actually comedy romps. And with some surreal stuff too, Twinkle Twinkle Killer Kane was rewritten as the ninth configuration, which he also did. So there's actually fun dialogue between the priest and the cop and all that stuff in Exorcist, which made its way.
There is a little bit of like super dark humor, even amongst like the demons when they're talking to the priest. The demon and the girl and all that. There's some pretty dark humor, if I remember. So
yeah, and so I always thought that really stuck with me. And then after that, so that was 75, 76. Around that time, then King's books start coming out. And everyone at school was talking about Salem's Lot. They're talking about The Stand and The Dead Zone or whatever the early titles were, And so my sister had them. So I started reading that, and I read The Shining, and I read Salem's Lot. I go, oh, wow, this is cool. And then when I really started going, when I take his books with me on the road when I was young. So I'm reading Skeleton Crew and the Bachman books, and I'm getting them for Christmas and, the whole thing. So I really started stacking up, started really getting into Lovecraft. And the whole Cthulhu mythos. So you can see how it all kind of starts seeping in, like an influence.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so the first stuff you write when you're really young, of course, are imitations, right?
Yeah, like everything.
I'm pretty sure the 1986 version of Livewire is probably Trucks sideways. Sure it is.
Hey, but look what it's turned into.
In a long time, but what's that?
I said, but look what it's turned into. It's an awesome book now.
Well, yes. I mean, so, but you have to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And bands start playing covers, and then they write their own thing, unless you're some virtuoso.
Yeah, painters paint what they see. They're copying. We all copy the masters, and then hopefully become them.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, look, I would like people that the book's not about a statement on society. It's none of that. It's supposed to hold your interest, be thrilling, exciting, hopefully some scary stuff, but hold your interest until the end, and even if that technology would never really be real, well, neither are warp engines, fun, right?
Yeah.
And, you just want to go along for the ride and enjoy it, and that's the whole thing. And I've been able to do that and have it be without you rolling your eyes at certain sentences or anything like that, right? If there's no eye rollers in it, I've done my job. If it's kept your interest, if you have
I have not rolled my eyes yet. I will say that, and I'm 48% in.
Okay, well, that's a pretty good ratio. No eye rolls to 48%. So I'm considering myself in the upper percentile there. That's really the goal. right? It's just, I mean, like when you write, too, don't you just want people to be entertained and enjoy it? You know, I'm not trying to say anything about the, you know, the place of man and the universe. I don't, that's sort of
I will
academic.
say to people who do that, to the critics that always want to do all the judging, my first finalist, Bram Stoker finalist, I was told don't write it because it's about recreational suicide. And I was told don't write it, throw it away. Nobody would ever want to do that. I'm really glad I didn't listen. So there's that judgment thing. If you got to be like, okay, you take what people say as criticism and you think about it, but you don't have to listen to it.
So your Stoker Award was it for debut novel or?
Oh no, that was a finalist. So I didn't get the Stoker, but that was my first finalist. That was like my first breakthrough, was a book that I was told to throw away by a very, like a professional, like somebody that's a name, you know, and I'm really glad I didn't listen. I won't mention any names.
That's fine. That's fine. You don't have to. It's believe me, it's completely understandable. But last thing, you know, I would imagine it's a small cadre of professionals, and I think you should be nice to everybody. You know, there's an old. It's in one of those Decline of Western Civilization movies. Ozzy Osbourne's making eggs in the morning, and you can tell he's hungover, and it's the '80s, and you gotta be nice to everybody because you're gonna see him on the way up, and you're really gonna see him on the way down.
That is absolutely true.
Right, so just there's no reason to have rivalry or anything with anybody. And if you don't like somebody's work, don't say anything bad about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so there's people who are hopefully there's going to be people that like the book. There's going to be people that doesn't ring with them and doesn't resonate with them at all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have to be prepared for that.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and that's with anything. I mean, and that's with music. That's we don't people don't listen to one song, watch one movie, read one book. We're not in competition.
Right.
Yeah. The better we do, the better we're making that whole genre and inspiring more listeners, more watchers, and more readers. So
I agree. You know, and I'd like the people to read my stuff, your stuff, whomever. You know, everybody in Shallow Waters that's starting to come up over there at CLP. You know, there's something for everybody in it. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, I'm going to go check out your Otis story because now knowing the characters from Live Wire, now I have to go back. And so you just sold another Patreon thing for Joe because I'm not a member of his Patreon, but now I got to go. I just got to do it. I got to go find out how much it is.
I think it's like $5, but it's called Exile.
I think I can handle it.
Yeah, it's called Exile from Cicada Lane. So it's about him leaving Florida for New Mexico. And for those of you who don't know, and so for those of you who don't, Now, for those of you who don't know, Livewire takes place in New Mexico in the early 90s on one endless October night, as they say. And then the one Ken, I told you about that because he was a trucker, so he's all over the U.S. and he's and actually that also introduced you to Walpurgis County too, which you need to know about, which is in Life Returns, available for free at Amazon.com or America Shops for ebooks.
Yeah, and I'm going to get all those links from you, put them in the description so everybody can find these things.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. You know, and Life Returns is a freebie, so it's put out there to hopefully get a little steam going before Livewire comes out on the 14th. And but that also in Livewire we cover Medusa Engineering, which is like an ongoing nemesis throughout a lot of the things I write. They're kind of a combination of Google, Goldman Sachs, and Raytheon. I mean, there's just it's just a little bit of all of that. But with maybe there's some occult influence in there too.
Yeah.
High tech meets black magic. What could go wrong? Right?
Apparently everything, but it's a lot of fun to find out.
Yeah, well, you could have a pretty good weekend in Vegas with that. So
yeah. Well,
and I just I feel blessed and fortunate to be able to even have a first novel out at the age that I am. It's not like I'm 22 and I've written an angst-filled story of a boy and his turtle. And so I feel very fortunate that they took Joe and the whole COP crew, Jocko and everybody were very patient with the formatting, and it's been a great experience. So let's see what happens.
That is so cool. Well, welcome to a whole new arena of cool people, which is horror writers.
Great. Well, thank you. Yeah, and plus, I can do this when I'm 80. I can do this in my Depends.
That is true. Yeah, you can't be in the mosh pit. Oh, you could be in the mosh pit. You're probably not going to get out of the mosh pit at 80.
No. I always I'd rather play than be in the. I'd rather cause the pit than be.
Yeah, yeah,
I'd rather be the instigator there. You know?
yeah,
And I still like. I mean, I play guitar every day. I still love to play and everything like that. There's no time to do it all. You
yeah.
know? And but I wish there was. But and even finding time to write. Actually, the last couple of weeks has been right with all this going on.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. Well, I hear that. That is like the great struggle is how do we keep creating when life keeps interfering?
Oh yeah, I mean, we got, my wife's got 2 cats at the vet. She had to take them there herself because I had to do this, and they're, just this life stuff, and that's going to be a whole
Yeah.
chaos thing. And cats don't like to travel, in case you didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. I've had a couple cats.
Love it. Dogs love it.
No, I don't know. We took 3 dogs to Brazil, and they were not happy with that situation.
Oh, that's a long flight. I don't even think.
Yeah.
Unless you're pimping hard in first class, I don't know if I could fly to Brazil.
Yeah.
I don't think there's enough booze to make me fly coach to Brazil, let alone in a cargo hold.
Yeah. And unfortunately, dogs don't do well on booze, so they had nothing. So,
We're gonna change that. We gotta get some legit whiskey dogs.
yeah.
But so I hope to keep things rolling, and the work is the novel extra. I'm going to try and get that spruced up. Who knows if that's going to go anywhere? I hope so. Nothing's done.
I expect great things out of this book. Everybody, I actually didn't realize it wasn't already out. So everybody, go grab this book. You're gonna love it. You said what date does it come out? The 14th?
Comes out April the 14th, the 1/4.
Yeah, I highly recommend this book. I'm going to do a review of this book. I'm going to give it to our reviewer at Space and Time Magazine, and I would give it 5 stars. Editing is excellent.
Really
the story is excellent. It's unique. It's interesting. Definitely kept the tension. Like I said, if it can keep me awake after 16 hours of being on the computer, that's pretty dang good.
That's a lot of eye workout,
Yeah.
Your cornea's got to be doing that at the end of that,
I get these honestly.
Yeah, and and it starts, and by the time we get to the end, it starts getting really heavy. So as it should, because we should really come up to a big end, right?
Oh yeah. Used up, nothing left.
Yeah, and I hope to tie it all up in a nice little bow at the end. So it was a pleasure to write. I loved it, and I'm glad it got to this point where it's actually going to be out in the world. And I hope people enjoy it. It's got a little bit of there's adventure, there's action, there's dialogue. There's
Purple lightning, backstory that we have to go search out.
Lots of backstory, emotional strife, giants, fire, as you will see. And,
great mental visual effects.
And it's I like to tell people it's the feel-good hit of the season. So it's like a Hallmark movie with a lot of violence.
I know. I'm like, okay, I'm going to trust you on the.
I'm kidding.
Has a happy ending, maybe somehow for somebody, which could be the monster.
Could be, and so there's a lot. Like I said, there's a lot of things intertwining in it, but it all gets. I hope it all converges the right way and straightens out for the reader at the end. Which is the hopefully I did my job enough to keep your interest and keep it going. So you can read Life Returns for free at Amazon before that, and then you can hop right over and pre-order Livewire before that. And I'll spend some time with you guys at night when you're right before bed, and come along for the ride, because it all works out. We're going to go on many adventures together.
Awesome. Well, I think it is working out. Where else can we find you? Like, I'm going to go, all these links are going to be in the description. Where else can we find you? Do you have like a writing website? Or can we follow you somewhere?
I bought the Monster domain because it was new at the time. I could be a horror writer and not have .monster. It just redirects to kyletoucher.com. But, just because the domain's cool, why not put that out? Right?
I didn't even know it was a thing. I did not know that was an extension.
I grabbed it, so I grabbed it for years. And so kyletoucher.monster redirects to kyletoucher.com. So you can go there, and you can also download Livewire from there. Or if you want to keep statistics, you can do it from Amazon or Kobo or Apple Books and Smashwords. And so Crystal Lake put it all over the place. Awesome. Wherever fine ebooks are sold or given away. And Twitter is just my name, KYLETOUCHER, Toucher on Twitter. Give a follow and watch me promote myself. And that's really about it. The band's Facebook page, Dr. Mel, but that's really not active. But I do use that to let the fans of the band that are still out there know what I'm doing there. There's 5,000-6,000 members of that, so that helps. And I just hope it all turns out, because I'd really like to. I want to get off the box. I've done enough shots. I need to get off the box. I just want to make it.
Well, count me in to help anyway. Love this book. Love what you've done with it. Look forward to more.
Oh yeah. Well, I have one here that actually once Livewire got bought, I was halfway through something. I mean, well, not halfway. I was about 115 pages into it. I stopped. And I don't know if I can pick the scent up because there's some good stuff in it. And actually, one of our characters from Livewire actually ended up making an appearance in it. So I need to get back to that once my slate is cleared.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
That's cool.
Definitely.
Psalms in the Key of Ursa Minor. What's that?
What is it? What is it again?
Oh, it's called Psalms in the Key of Ursa Minor.
Interesting. All right.
So,
well, we have something to look forward to after Livewire.
It takes place in a mental institution that used to be an observatory.
I can see that you can do so much with that. That's going to be super cool.
Yeah, the tagline will be "Wackiness ensues." So,
well,
it's a heartfelt comedy rum.
Probably death and like some horror thrown in there somewhere.
There's some weirdness in it. I'm not open to discuss right now, but it's based on something I wrote years ago that I'm reworking.
Awesome.
So yeah,
awesome.
Basically a ghost and a serial killer working together. And but up front, let's do life returns. Let's get you reading Livewire, and if you'd like to join Patreon, there's like 11 other stories of mine there from Crystal Lake, and including 2 that tie directly into Livewire, and all of them have a little bit of intersection.
That's awesome. All right. Well, you guys heard it. Thank you so much for being on the show. I want to have you back. I can talk to you. We've actually went way over time, and I feel like we haven't even slightly got into everything that you could talk about. I mean, from punk rock, visual effects, and books. I mean, 3 awesome things to talk about.
There's a lot going on. I mean, I've been on the planet a while, so and also I like to think my writing got better. I just had to wait until I got older.
Well, yeah, you got to get that maturity.
Yeah, it's still good to write about the human condition when you're 28.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at 28, I was writing a lot of crap. I didn't really start getting into like decent writing until I think I was about 40. So
yeah, and I did some stuff in 2000 after we finished Serenity. So that was 05, 06. I had like 9 weeks paid off because the overtime was so insane, and I wrote a lot. And part of that output of that is what I'm rewriting or reworking as the novel I just told you about the observatory. And so I did that when I was 42, 43, something like that. So, I realized how much my voice has changed, until that. And, there's a lot to be said for that. So it's never too late to start. It's the point I make.
Exactly. Hey, Grandma Moses, mic drop.
That's right. You're thinking about, Tom Clancy didn't get a book out until he was in his 40s, right?
Yeah.
And he said something really.
Go ahead.
Real life doesn't have to make sense, but fiction does. So
yeah.
That's the only you kind of have to hold on to that too.
Yeah.
It's never too late to start. I don't care if you're 58, I don't care if you're 64, whatever you watch it. You're thinking about writing. If you're 22, I don't care. Just start. Just do it.
Yeah.
Even if it's a description of, I don't care what, going to the store and buying a blender. I don't care.
Yeah.
You got to start somewhere. Write what you like, write what you love, write what you see, what you live.
Yep, and the more you're doing it, the better it's going to get, guaranteed.
Oh yeah,
it doesn't have to be perfect from the beginning.
Bowling, baseball, guitars, writing, cobbling, whatever.
Yeah,
right? Just the more you do it,
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. I hope to have you back. You have an open invite anytime you want to talk about anything. I invite you.
Well, thank you. That was very kind of you.
Yeah, you're awesome. And Live Wire is awesome. Everybody go pick it up right now. I'm going to go hunt down all your other stuff because I need to know these backstories.
Okay.
For everybody, Amanda Worthington is our next show next Saturday. We're going to follow up with Maxwell I Gold. And then we're going to end up with AI versus I Zhang. And we're pitting her with AI and we're going to do a write-off. So, and that will sum up April. Like, what month are we in? April.
April already. Can you believe that?
Yeah. So thank you, everybody. Enjoy this video that's coming up. And I hope you will leave your answers in the comments below. And thank you so much, Kyle, for being on.
Well, thanks. It's nice to meet you, Angela, and everybody else out there. And so we'll see you out there.
All right. Bye-bye.
Kirk out.